Thank you. I appreciate being here. It's a great opportunity for my company, Hewlett-Packard Enterprise, to be the grand sponsor. And I have a lot to tell you this morning, and I'm sorry about that. I know you had fun around Anaheim and Disney, maybe downtown Disney last night. But please pay attention and take notes. I serve as an adjunct professor. I have at 2 universities, so there will be a test. I want you to know that. Do not be distracted by socks and the sock box. I do want to talk about that a little bit when we're finished. A great opportunity to partner with Nth and the SOC organization. Look at this title, The Intelligent Edge, IoT, and Converged OT and IT. Now you probably understand every word up there, and you've heard of the word, maybe not OT because this is an IT conference. Nth and HPE is in the IT, information technology business. But there's a whole world called operational technologies, and some of you have been in that with control systems, embedded data acquisition systems, industrial networks that aren't really data center or cloud specific. But what's happening and what we are promoting actually is the convergence of the two. You remember the days when peanut butter and jelly was not on the same sandwich? No, I don't think you do. But there was a day, I believe, when they weren't on the same sandwich, and some lady or man decided, I'll put them together, and every child, at least in America, has grown up. And by the way, that metaphor doesn't work in Europe. I tried it, but it works really well here. So this is these two worlds I'd like to talk to you about, and it's a great business opportunity for many, many in the industry, many in this room, but it's coming, and a lot of it is here as well. I really do appreciate being here and doing this, pardon me, would be the closing keynote on this day. And I have a lot to impart to you. And Dan, do I have 3 hours? Yeah. How much time do I have? But yeah, I have to rip through a lot of this. But I want you to know that I hope I can educate and show you things that are going on that will be valuable to you. Not only entertain and educate, but you can actually make some money. Is that okay? In the business as well, right? Let's move on very quickly. I'd like to start very, very high level. A former colleague and friend of mine, God rest his soul, Dr. Jim Gray at Microsoft. He was a Microsoft fellow, and he wrote a book in the year 2009. And this is intriguing, and he talked about essentially these phases where scientific discovery and innovation thousands of years ago was an experimental phase, excuse me, just to figure out what's going on. And then we progressed to a theoretical science. Some of you who took engineering classes studied Newton's laws, Maxwell's equations, and it became quantified in a way. And then we moved into computational science, where computers were not just doing census for the US government, but they were doing scientific analysis and other types of computation. And now we've moved and graduated to big data analytics, and there's nothing we can't analyze and figure out now, right? And that's a world that we're getting into. But what I thought was prophetic and insightful about Dr. Gray's 2009 book is he called it data intensive, where data would be captured by instruments and generated by simulators and machines. And that's a dimension of big data that, in a way, he predicted, because today we have so much of this, and we've even named it the Internet of Things, meaning there's pent-up data in things, such as even dog food bowls that can tweet you when they're empty. It's data. You can argue how valuable is that. I guess it's valuable for the dog. But the point is, almost everything has data in it that can be captured. And he did not use the term big data. He did not use the term Internet of Things or big analog data, some of the things that we were able to name here. So let's talk about sources of big data. There's traditional sources that I believe everyone in the room is familiar with, of course. That's enterprise, customer research management, HR data, event logs, stock ticks, medical data. That's a big category, of course, but that's one domain of 3 that I like to grossly portion. The second one is more recent, social data. I do remember speaking in my former job at IBM about Twitter that just was born, and that social data was coming, and somebody would say, I just finished my toast. But now we know it's Twitter. In fact, there are social media vice presidents at corporations, right? That not only Twitter, of course, but Instagram and, of course, YouTube, that are dedicated to this notion of social data. And in fact, there's so much of it. Your tweets, your posts, your comments. In fact, data scientists will tell you, if they can monitor all of your posts, all of your comments, some of your email, and all of your tweets, they can actually predict what you're going to do next. which, by the way, is easy if you tweet what you're going to do next. I'm going to Burger King. This guy's going to eat lunch. That'll be $100,000. But barring that, what I would call inferential data, right, can be put together, and the more data one can collect, the more one can predict the future. Who does not want to predict the future? In business, what will your customers do? What are the markets? Personally, what is my health? Who will I marry? What will I be? Will my kids be prouder if their old man's really a square when I grow up to be a man? Who did I just quote? The Beach Boys, right? Everybody wants to know the future, and that's why palm reading and astrology and crystal balls have become popular in the sense that everyone's enamored with the future, and one can do a better job at predicting the future if what? If one can have statistical significance, more and more data. And that's one of the elements, if not the driving element, of the whole idea of big data. So as we move into this world of things, the IoT, Internet of Things, we've got new sources of data. Never before have we been pulling data off a pump that's pumping chemicals in a chemical plant. Never before have we pulled off so much data in your car. 10 years ago it was almost zero. Right now it's getting more and more and more. And all your social behavior. Why do you think your cell phone provider, service provider wants you to have the location on all the time and they make it hard to turn it off? That's data, right? Your location, what you're doing is very, very important because, again, you can predict who's going to be elected, where are you going to go on vacation, how much inventory should I shift with information. So this world of physical data I'd like to talk about, this third domain that is huge. I'm going to tell you how huge it is shortly. But let's move on. Things data is derived from the physical analog world, meaning it's not digital yet, meaning it's not ones and zeros yet. And if it's not ones and zeros, we can't do much with it in IT, right? We have to get it digitized. It's usually from nature, it's from people, electrical, like your location, eventually your medical data, your disposition, how long you spend on a particular website, and it's mostly acquired by sensors and digitized through analog to digital, ones and zeros conversion. So it can be sent on networks and computed. And we have this notion of DAC, data acquisition, which is a huge business, not really related to the IT business, not about compute, storage, and networking, but to be able to take information from things. Like what? Well, there they are in the circles. Location, time, analog phenomenon, very important, we digitize it. Vibration, light, sound, video, particulates, acceleration, wind, velocity, vibration, moisture, temperature. All these things that are going to be captured, digitized, and then can be used to assimilate and conduct business and also social benefit. It doesn't necessarily have to be profitable business, but the business of societal benefits as well. We're going to talk a little bit more about it. Here's some examples. Look what's happening. I'll just go over it quickly. And this notion, as we leave 2017, the amount of data that is connected by things as opposed to smartphones, PCs, and tablets, the amount of data is now eclipsing other things. Right, other types of devices like, we're familiar with cars and TVs being connected, of course, and that will continue to grow. But who has a tattoo here? You don't necessarily have to admit it. In the future, your tattoos will be motion graphics and connected to the internet. Isn't that profound? And I'm predicting that. By the way, I predict it'll happen after I retire, so I won't be held accountable for the prediction. All my predictions are way out, so no one can come back. But the point is, that's really not too far-fetched. And then you can make it disappear. You can, if you go to a conservative business, you have no tattoo. Then when you go out and party, you have the sleeves and the neck, and then their motion video. That's just one thing that's happening. That's going to be a thing connected to the internet. By the way, what are things? Everything is a thing. That's all. Wait. What are things? Everything is a thing in the Internet of Things. Now listen. The analog data from things, this room, a turbine, a windmill, a car, a submarine, a plane, a train, an automobile, is bigger than all other big data combined. Now that's an extraordinary statement, so it requires what? Extraordinary evidence, right? So is it older? I'm saying it's older. Well, if you believe in the Big Bang Theory, I would assert that was an analog event. There was a magnetism, motion, acceleration, light. No one was there to measure it. But also no one was there to even prove that it happened. But the point is, if it did happen, I think it was an analog event there, right? Contrariwise, if you believe in the creation model and God said, let there be light, light is an analog phenomenon, whichever camp you're in. Those sources of data are the oldest in the world. And in fact, they have been captured before the whole computer revolution started as well, with temperature, for example, and the first thermometer, which was, I believe, invented in 1630. Don't Google that to prove me right or wrong. Pay attention to me. But this whole notion of the analog world being measured is really older. Is it faster? All you have to do is think about video and then the motion, vibration of every electron in your body. I think you'd agree it's faster. And is it bigger? Well, again, I go back to that. Think about the vibration of the air conditioning vents, the beat of your heart and the blood flow of everyone in this room, of everyone in this city, of everyone in this country, of everyone in this planet, and those of extraterrestrials if they exist. Think about that. That's the biggest in the universe. So now, if you like big data, you're going to love the Internet of Things, because it is this. It is that big. And this has driven all these marketectures. What's a marketecture? It's a combination of two words. And what do we call marketectures? What's the French word for market? It's a portmanteau, meaning two things together, right? And brunch is one of those things. And factory of the future. Airbus talks about that. Smart production as well. Industry 4.0, a German government initiative that is taking over Europe and Asia. As well, intelligent systems, Intel talks about that. Brilliant machines, GE, big analog data solutions, National Instruments. These are all coming together and are subsets and concepts of this notion of big analog data of things in the world as well. Okay, the vocabulary is growing. There's an edge. Have you heard that? There's the IoT, of course, standing for Internet of Things. And I should say that's a little bit of a misnomer, because Duke Energy, the largest supplier of energy in the United States, has an industrial IoT solution in over 60 of their power plants. And I don't think they connected it to the Internet, do you? But they did connect it to a network, right? Or an intranet or something private as well. So just real quick, it should be called the Network of Things, but that acronym is not, and that's negative. But the notion that it has to be an internet, as defined by the Wikipedia, HTTP protocol, publicly accessible, is not really what's driving the financial gains. It's more in private networks. Now, your home, of course, and your car will have more of an internet feel, if you will, but this whole notion of private networks within organizations to connect things and get data from things is extremely powerful. The edge is a place. It's where the things are, and it's not the data center in the cloud. Almost everyone here is engaged, as is our colleagues in Nth, with the data center or the cloud. But the edge is not, and the edge will start housing the very IT products that are in data centers and clouds. Edge computing, right? The convergence of OT and IT out at the edge. I had one pump manufacturer tell me, I can't even buy a pump today, and there's a computer built into it, as well. Of course, your handheld device is growing more and more as an IT device with capability. In fact, have you noticed your handheld device, whether it be an Android or a Microsoft product or an iPhone, is hanging now? You don't even hanging, you technical people. Only something stateful can hang, right? In the old days when it wasn't a state, it wouldn't hang. That was the beauty of it. Oh, well, now it's starting to, right? And I'm not saying this is negative. I'm saying because of its sophistication. Those are the type of, speaking of hanging, have you ever heard of Control-Alt-Delete? Yeah. Of course you have. Did you know who's the guy who invented that? Just a little trivia. Every time you come to my Keynote, you get more, right? Here's a trivia. Who invented Control-Alt-Delete? His name is Dr. Dave Bradley. I worked for him twice in my career at IBM. He worked for me twice. And when he retired, I was his manager. He was older than me, so I was his boss. You got to be careful, by the way, right? Because when you're the boss of somebody, you know what happens later in your career? They become your boss. So just a little tip for you. But I provided 3 cakes for him at his retirement party. What shape were they in? Yes, I carried a keyboard into a baker, and I said, can you make 3 cakes? Control, Alt, and Delete. Now, he created Control, Alt, Delete because he wrote the first BIOS of the first PC, which is probably the only reason we have jobs today, all of us, right? Because of the x86 architecture today. And I'm exaggerating to make a point. Some of you could work elsewhere, I think. So we're all in this industry that's driven by this first PC that translated into servers primarily by the Compaq company, and now it's translated into this IT that we have all over the world. But here's what's interesting. In the 20th anniversary of the PC, there was a big conference held here in California, and on stage was Andy Grove. Who's he? Former CEO of Intel. On stage is Rod Canyon. Who's he? The founder of Compaq. On stage is Bill Gates. Have you heard of him? On stage is, I forget his name, the guy who invented VisiCalc. Does anybody remember VisiCalc? But that was the reason why the PC took off, right? It was that software. Yes, that guy. Okay, and on stage was Dr. Dave Bradley, who invented Control-Delete, because he was one of the 100 people who claimed they were one of the 12 who founded the first PC. So he's on stage, and he was really one of them. And the moderator said, Dr. Dave Bradley, I understand you created Control-Alt-Delete. You invented that. What's that all about, right? Control-Alt-Delete. And he said, well, I first created it as an Easter egg. You know what that is? And meaning I wanted a quick way to bypass power on self-test after you boot, because those days you had to turn things on and off, remember? And then they discovered, and the IBM publications people got a hold of it and printed, you could do a quick one, you bypass post, power on self-test, and you get to your, there's none of this double clicking back then, right? You had to put your floppy in, if you people remember. But here's what he said. I know it's taking too long on this, but he actually said this. He said, but you know, I have to share the credit. I may have invented Control-Alt-Delete, but Bill Gates here made it famous. So if you don't know what that means, ask your neighbor. All right, let's move on to my stuff and no more Dr. Bradley. But he's a fine man and was a mentor to me, and he still does a great lecture called the Personal History of the Personal Computer. All right, let's move on. Lots of IoT everywhere. That's my point here. And if you'd like these slides, you can go through this. I want to make sure I'm within the time here. Homes, cities, in healthcare, in farming, agriculture, as you know. There's so much going on with transportation and retail, and I'll talk about a couple of examples as well. But how do you make the edge? You already know what the edge is. What is it? It's a place where the action is, where the things are, and it's not what? This is on the test. It's not the data center, right? It's not the cloud. And it will be everywhere, but we make the edge intelligent with the 3 C's. Connectivity is obvious. You have to connect things. The second is compute, and this is new and emerging. We're doing lots of compute, not in the data center. We're doing compute in your hand, right? We're doing compute on the manufacturing floor, attached to robots, attached to cars, automobiles, in streets for smart cities. The list goes on, right? We're shifting compute out. And then third is control. This is usually missed by those who are pontificating like me on this topic, is the thing has to be controlled. You have to control the robotic arm. You have to control the autonomous car, right? So it's not all about just collecting data and computing it. That'd be like, this never happened to you. Did you ever go to a business meeting? It's happened to me, but maybe not you. And all you do is collect data and you talk and you talk and you collect more data and you analyze it and you get this conclusion. And then you leave and you don't do any action. Does that ever happen? Nothing gets done. It's like on Men in Black. Remember that little device? It's like the meeting never happened. Or you go to a physician and he says, you know, I got all this data, your temperature, your PSAs, your blood, this and that, and have a nice day. So you're waiting for the control or the action, right, after the data. So it really isn't about insights. A lot of people say, oh, it's all about the data. No. Oh, it's all about the insight from the data. No. What it's all about? The action you take to make your business better, or your health better, or society better, right? It's all about this control and action. And that could be action, but it doesn't begin with C. So that's why it's called control here. All right, let me talk about some basic principles. The 7 principles of the IoT. Principles are important. If you don't have them, as this says, then you're going to be easily swayed by anybody's opinion. I'm not saying they're bad opinions. I'm just saying that you got to have conviction, or you go to a meeting and one conclusion cancels out another and you walk away with non-conclusiveness and nothing gets done. You've got to have convictions. I know this company, Nth, was founded on convictions, and when an alternative opinion came, I'm sure you thought about it, but you held to your principles, right? We're going this way, and you got to do that. Or you'll never create new product categories. You'll never get emerging technologies to the market if you don't have convictions. And you have to, I think of the founder of Wendy's. Who's that? Dave Thomas. What else did he founded before that? Remember, you always get trivia. Kentucky Fried Chicken. Dave Thomas founded Kentucky Fried Chicken. Who do we think founded it? Who's the head of marketing here? Congratulations. Yeah, everybody thinks it's him, right? All right, anyway, this guy was told, we don't need another hamburger joint. We got so many of them, right? In California, we have what? In-N-Out. We've got all in Carl's Jr., and then we have, of course, Burger King, McDonald's. Well, but now he's number 3, right, as well. But he was convicted that if I made it square and fresh, you know, it would work. And you got to have those convictions. Let's go through them real quickly. There's a video on this that you may, there, it's on the bottom of this slide. If you want to see that video, I don't have time to go through them. I'm going to go through. First of all, I already talked about this. It presents a big analog data problem. It presents a big data problem. So if you like big data, this is going to be great. because we're collecting, you know, the biggest data I've ever heard of big data is 40 terabytes a second on a single channel. Every time I do a keynote, I ask the audience, is anybody, but I was told I'm not allowed to have questions and answers, but I'm going to ask you anyway. Well, you're not allowed to ask questions, but I can ask you. I think I'm getting around the loophole here. What's the biggest data you've ever heard? Is it bigger than 40 terabytes a second? Because if it is, I'm going to start using that. All right, if you've heard of big data, email me. Bigger than this, right? On a single channel. By the way, where is that? That's the Large Hadron Collider. What I would call the scientific Internet of Things. And what other things? They're subatomic particles. By the way, they spin them around really fast. And then they, unlike the Ghostbusters, they cross the streams. They smash them together, and then they look at them, and they derive an insight. That's a new subatomic particle. 3 years ago, 4 years ago, what was that when that was founded? Anyone know? Who said that? The Higgs boson, and this is a gift. Who is it named after? Just, yeah, Professor Higgs. He named it after himself, so that's easy to remember. Okay, let's go on number 2. Don't forget this term, perpetual connectivity. What would you do if you were perpetually connected to your product, to your service, to your environment, to your customers, to your employees? What would you do? Well, I'm perpetually connected to the Apple company because I have an iPhone. And one morning I woke up and the app for the Apple Watch was pushed onto my phone. I did not ask for it. And I looked at it and I pressed it, and there were some beautiful people so happy with that watch. And they were so fit. I wanted that watch. So what was the implication there? Well, Tom, you already have the app, just go get the watch. Well, when you're perpetually connected, you can sell up. That's what that was for. Not only do that, but you do a lot of things. So I ask you, what would you want to do in the future with your customers, with your products, if you could be perpetually connected, right? Constantly, right? So let's talk about this. I'm getting theoretical here, but perpetual connectivity annihilates time and place constraints. Think about that. This is very philosophical. This was from my doctoral dissertation. And if you've ever done one, you have to be philosophical. By the way, do you know in a doctoral dissertation, you don't have to be practical. It doesn't have to do anything good. It just has to add 2 things. It has to add to the knowledge, the human knowledge, body of human knowledge, and it has to be approved by the university, right? So this was part of it, and it was an interesting concept to study how if you don't have a time and a place dependency, what could you do in life? How would that change you? Now, right now, you have both. If you want to hear me live, you have to be here in this room when I'm talking. That doesn't mean you still can't hear me, right, on a recording at another time and place. But it's very interesting. If we map very quickly, like books, if I had to do a report when I was a child, my mother had to drive me to the library when it was open. Today, my son could do a same report on the pyramids anywhere. Virtually anywhere, right? On vacation, at the gym, at home, at school, at work, out in the field, in his backyard. How? Because he's perpetually connected, and he can get on Wikipedia, Amazon, do searches, Google searches, figure this out with no time and place constraint per se. Now, that has revolutionized the world. So if you can plot this in 2 dimensions of time and place, if you're in the northeast quadrant, the top right, that eliminates time dependency and eliminates location dependency, meaning renders you independent of them. What can you do? What can you do in talking? Well, there's a face-to-face discussion. Then the telephone came along. It eliminated what? Location, but not time, because you had to be on the same time, right? And then, of course, voicemail and other ways of communicating. You get it. You can map again. Healthcare, the traditional visit. This is what I did my dissertation in telemedicine, in medical informatics. Live telemedicine. If it's live, it's not time dependent. You got to be there. Contrary-wise, if you do store and forward, you can eliminate. The more and more you eliminate, you actually drive into what I'd call the quadrant of highest efficiency. Okay, and this isn't good for everything. But eventually, if you could get up there with everything you do, you'll never have to be in contact with another human again. Some of you like this idea. That's the way we're. On the other hand, there are things you want to do when you're with humans. And by the way, I believe that the body language and all that stuff missing is one of the reasons why this work at home idea is starting to go the other way. 10 years ago, everybody go work at home. I don't have to pay for rent and telephones and all that. Now everybody come back because of efficiency. But the point is, many, many things will happen up there. And some of the values, if you get perpetual connectivity, is you can sell up. You can read this. I won't go through it all. You can monetize it, right? You can also maintain. The famous, at night your car gets downloaded, the patch or whatever the case may be. And also you can look at new behaviors. I've noticed, that most middle-aged baby boomers or later-aged baby boomers are buying this at 3 in the morning at this location. Is that data important? Is it good? Okay. Let's go on to number 3, and I got to go through 7 of these things. It's really real time. Well, that means you can't go on in this conversation without understanding the 4 stages of an IoT or an intelligent edge solution. There's things on the left. There's stage 1, where the sensors and the actuators either pull data or control the thing. There's the access and control. There's stage 3, where there's edge IT. Now that's all at the edge, stages 1, 2, and 3 of the edge. And then there's what? The famous cloud and data center, in which we have been intoxicated, haven't we, the last few years. Everything goes to the cloud. Sensor cloud, everything is the cloud. The cloud is the greatest thing, and it is great. And I have personally built clouds, some of the most earliest ones, maybe not the first, but very early when cloud computing became what it is today. It has now reached a point where, because this data and things is so important, listen now, there's 7 reasons not to send the data to the cloud. There's 7 reasons, and I'm going to go over them, and it will be on the test. 7 reasons. I'm not saying the cloud shouldn't have data and shouldn't be in a participation here, but the point is there's an alternative emerging, and it's exploding, and we're taking advantage of it. So let's move on now that you understand in perfect depth stage 1, 2, 3, 4. And real time for IoT data is right when it exists, right when that pump is starting to vibrate, right when that parking lot is full, right when that suspect is running down the street in a law enforcement application. That's the data that's needed. If it takes a long time to process, it could be useless and could be too old. That's why I say on the bottom right, it could be too old there, right? All right, let's move on. There's a spectrum of value. There's data when it's fresh, data when it's old. If you unfortunately are involved in some litigation, you have to go back 7 years. That's important old data, isn't it? Contrariwise, if you want to discover something immediately, like a subatomic particle that's going to disappear in, I don't know, femto or nanoseconds, that's important. Why is there a spectrum of value? Because you can compute at all domains. This is interesting. Many of us in the IT world think of computing to happen primarily in a data center or cloud, or of course on a desk PC, and then of course a laptop that you can carry around, right? But the world is not that anymore, right? Smarter and smarter things. You can compute in a sensor. That's not very popular today, but eventually it will be. You can compute at the access gateway, stage 2. You can compute at edge IT, where there are computer systems on manufacturing floors, out in cornfields, in John Deere tractors, for example, in your automobile, computing. And then of course the cloud and the data center, which is common as well. Now we're on number so anyway, 3 types of insight. I'm going to move a little quicker here. We're on number 5. Now, this is interesting. When I was a little boy, I joined IBM, and I wanted to work on the personal computer. One reason is because Dr. Dave Bradley, what did he invent? This is just an oral test here. Yeah. Control delete, right? He was an adjunct professor at the university. He was 26 years old. I was 19 studying for my degree, and he taught me Maxwell's equations. And I looked at him and said, I want to work for IBM, and I want to teach at night. And indeed I did. I don't now. I work for a superior company, the Hewlett-Packard Enterprise company. However, and I do teach at night. He was a role model. But my point in saying this is when I was a young boy at IBM, my boss came to me and said, we're making this thing called a laptop computer. Have you ever heard of a notebook computer? No. Dan, you said this was the gifted. And he said, Tom, you love interacting with them. They're brilliant. And, and I can't even get. All right. So there was a day where the notebook computer didn't exist. I think you'd agree. It didn't exist forever in the Big Bang or God didn't create it the first 7 days. I'm pretty sure of that. All right, let's go back. So he said, you got to make and I was a lead engineer at the time. You got to make a laptop, a carrier computer. It wasn't even called a laptop back then. It was called you got to make a portable computer that's both light to carry, right? You carry it around, and also the battery lasts a long time. Well, back then we didn't have all this easy stuff the young engineers have, like NiCad and lithium batteries, whatever. We had the NiCad, of course, and I said, I didn't say these words, but in my head I said, boss, that's a mutually exclusive objective. A mutually exclusive objective. I can make it lightweight, but the battery will go in 15 minutes. Or I can make it super heavy, and the battery will last all day. And guess what he said to me? Yeah, he said, well, this is why I hired you, and you're an engineer. And I started thinking, well, Well, anyway, we did it. Not me personally, but now you can carry them around, right? And you have been for years. But it happened. What technology solved, this is what I'm trying to say here. Technology solved a mutually exclusive objective. And I had one at home. I want to watch the news, which I don't, but I'm making this up. My daughter would like to watch a children's show. At the time, we had one television. That's called a mutually exclusive objective. How did we solve that? How was it solved for us? Well, I'm not proud of this, so don't get me wrong. I'm trying to make a point. But somehow I have 7 televisions in my house. That's because they're cheap, right? You can buy them $150 and $100. So the point isn't that I can afford all these TVs. The point is, now we've solved the mutually exclusive objective. Anybody can watch what they want, right? So it disappeared because of technology. And that's what this is. Today, if I want to get immediate insight, when I pull information, immediately is where the world's going to win. Whoever gets that is going to win. Okay, let's move on, as I'm running out of time. Principle number 6 is the next big data. If you know big data, you know they're characterized in the literature by V as well. It's going to be visibility. I got to see things out there because I can't bring it all back to the cloud. And then the 7th one is, this is very important, data center class compute and analytics will shift out of the data center to the edge. And while they're there, they will converge with operational technologies, such as control systems, data acquisition systems, and industrial networks. And we'll have effectively a multidimensional box. Now, I predicted this a while back, and I was fortunate enough to make it come true. And we have such a box that has operational technologies, peanut butter, and information technologies, IT, jelly, in the same sandwich. Why is that a good idea? How many have a smartphone? Everyone. Why is it a good idea that your GPS, your camera, your movie player, your music player, your telephone, your text machine, your language translator, and your flashlight, and your wallet, if you're a millennial, is in that phone? Why is that a good idea? Is there any benefit? How many benefits are there? You might not know them all, but there are 7. You notice I like that number. Right? The 7, right? The 7 is a great number. 7 dwarfs, I think that's appropriate for being here in Disneyland. But there are 7 reasons why everything together is better. It's less energy. You know, it has no cables. You can buy it in one place, right? You buy this thing in one place and you have all these devices. But compare it to the world where you had a camera around your neck, a GPS on your belt, a text on your belt, your fat wallet, you know, et cetera. So this notion of convergence is very important, and the notion of making it a powerful computer out at the edge with no compromise is extremely important. Now, why do we even care? IDC predicts that at least 40% of the IoT created data will be stored, processed at the edge. Won't be sent back to the cloud. So there's an alternative market here, right? We'll have the cloud and we'll have the IoT. Therefore, we hold to these principles. We did this. We created a shift of IT, and HPE is a world leader, as you know, in computing, and we converged some functions with OT partners. OT partners would be, for example, Schneider Electric, National Instruments, General Electric, right? Not necessarily IT companies like we are in Hewlett-Packard Enterprise. And we created a new class of solutions called the Edgeline Systems. That's just the brand name. So this is a trend we're starting. Now I say to my teams, a good company follows the trends. Would you agree? A great company sets the trends. And I tell them, we don't follow trends, we set trends. And these are the trends we're setting, right? Now, why do I say that? Now, following trends isn't bad. In fact, most of my competitors follow trends, right? And us. And you can make some good money following the trend, right? And commoditizing and competing on price and delivery like some do. But when you set the trend, what's the advantage? It's called the first mover advantage. What is that? You, in your businesses, as you set a trend for your customers, can enjoy, and now this is very much supply side, you can enjoy higher margin. If your product's good, of course, right? Because you're different. If you're first, you're different by definition. But you better be different and better. It's possibly be different and worse, right? But you got to be different and better. You can enjoy the highest margin. You can enjoy the halo effect. I'm a leader, so therefore I'll trust you on the next one, right? You can enjoy the free, if you will, attribution and marketing you'll get by being the leader. I get this all the time. I just interviewed with the New York Times yesterday, right? This is a new thing, and we want to be the first in media to tell people about what's happening. So the benefits of a converged system. Now here's IDC. This is their June report, and focused on Hewlett-Packard Enterprise. This is figure 3. It's not too clear because I actually lifted it out of IDC. And I'm giving them, of course, attribution, as you can see. But this is their report they did. And you'll notice they noted in edge infrastructures a new product class called Converged OT and IT. And it was created by us. I'm proud to say we have 100% of that market. Why? Well, when you're the sole inhabitant of any market, you have. So I'm not bragging about we beat anybody there, but we were first, and therefore we will be copied. I mean, this is a trend we're setting. We will be copied, right? As well. This is new. It's about a year old that we're emerging in. We have some major wins in manufacturing, in actually the media edge with cable companies distributing things from the edge as opposed to back in a data center or a CDA. Okay, I got to wrap up. We have the edge to core solutions. That's what this does. When you build something that is Xeon technology, you might know what that is, that's not a wimpy core, right? That's not a proprietary core. This is the #1 selling server grade, enterprise grade processor we're shifting out to the edge. It's VMware certified. It's validated for GE Predix. It's validated for Citrix, SAP, the list goes on. Now, it also has manageability, so I can manage them just like my data center, and that's key to adopting edge computing. But what it allows is you can go from edge to core. Now, if we represent the core on the right, there's a whole list of HPE servers. Of course, they can be anybody's servers, but we prefer them to be in the data center, of course. But the profundity of this lies not in that it's all HPE. The profundity of this lies in the fact that customers can shift 100% compute at the edge for 7 reasons, or 100% in the cloud, or 50-50, or 10-90, 70-30, 60-40. When I talk this fast, I got to do the math right. So you get what I'm saying here. You can seamlessly shift the workload when it's important to do things immediately at the edge. Why is that important? All right, I'm going to start wrapping up here. There are 7 reasons not to send the data to the cloud. There are tons of reasons to send the data to the cloud. Here's 7 reasons not. 1 is latency. How fast do you want to know? How fast do you want to know the object in front of you in your autonomous car run by a robot or a computer, right? How fast do you want to know that object is a plastic garbage can or a little girl playing in the road? Would you like to send that to the cloud and do some computing and then have it sent back? Latency, right? Response time. By the way, I know this. I hit a plastic garbage can going 55 miles an hour, and I saw it coming. Now I have a big dent in my Audi A5, $1,500 later. Why did I hit that and not swerve? You tell me. First of all, it's not a human life, not even an animal life. It's also not a brick wall where I would get hurt, but I concluded what? And I knew it was empty because it was flying around, right? It wasn't filled with cement, so I didn't swerve. Why? Because if I went to the right, I'd hit a car. If I went to the left, I'd hit the rail. Would I have taken that risk if it was a little girl? And I think everyone in this room would absolutely take a different evasive action depending on what the object is. But boy, did I need to know quickly, right? And I did. I was able to conclude. I'm just going to hit this baby, just hope it doesn't hit the windshield, and boom, we went on. And anyway, you get the point. So how fast do you want to know a robotic arm is pumping out 100 defective products every 10 seconds? Would you like to know that in 10 seconds, 20 seconds, 30? Would you like to be waiting for something, right? As well, okay, you get the point here on latency. That's only 1 of 7. I don't have time for all of them. Well, bandwidth. How big is the big data at the edge? It's bigger than everything, and the bandwidth might not be there to send it. And then there's cost. Even if you have the bandwidth, it costs. And then, I've had people tell me, Tom, I have the bandwidth to send all this data from the things back to my data center, but I don't want to use my bandwidth for that. I want to use it for other mission critical applications because I don't want to buy more bandwidth, right? And then there's, of course, threats. Do you remember President Reagan had the best security in the world, would you agree? Or among the best? When he went out of the White House, what happened? Unfortunately, he got shot. Now, I bring this up because he was vulnerable. When you leave the edge with your data, it's vulnerable. I've had customers say, I can't leave it. It has to be processed at the edge. I can't send it, to the cloud. Then there's duplication and reliability. You can't even make a cell phone call today without perhaps it being dropped or saying, can you hear me now? Right? It's just reliability. It isn't even hostile security threats. It's just reliability. It'll drop packets. Things go, cell sites don't work. Satellites as well. And then there's compliance. I had a customer in the UK say, Tom, I don't even have any of these other 6 issues, but my company policy doesn't let me send it across a border, geofencing as well. So there are 7 reasons that are emerging in the market. But then I had a customer who had no 7. So I said, okay, you do all your computing in the cloud, a retail customer, right? We said that as well. So I want you to know it's a balance. Okay, some real world use cases. I have a little more time, because this is a real world use case with a name of a company who makes compressors that we can say. Obviously, I'd never use a customer name unless we were given permission. What I do is I say words that rhyme with the customer's name. No, I'm just kidding. But I never would do that, right? Okay, so I want you to know that first. So here's a real world use case where the thing is a compressor, and the edge is what? It's the facility where the compressor is. And one can do what we call condition monitoring and determine, wouldn't it be nice to predict a failure? I'd like to, in fact, Duke Energy, and I can use their name as well, predicts maintenance requirements from their turbines to avoid brownouts, to ensure that the maintenance is done right. By the way, there's 2 types of errors in maintenance, right? You don't do maintenance and it breaks. That's called a type 2 error. And then you do maintenance and it doesn't need it. That's called a type 1 error. Most people make a type 1 error in order to what? Avoid a type 2, right? But a type 1 error is expensive. In fact, I talked to Flowserve Corporation, a $6 billion industrial pump company. It's $150,000 in a hostile environment that puts the worker at risk to do maintenance, to discover sometimes it doesn't need it, right? That's the idea here. And that you go back to perpetual connectivity, and one of the benefits is monitoring. Here's something cool, not far from here, is what? Levis Stadium. And we outfitted that. Well, what are the things? Almost everything is a thing. The hot dog stand, whether the bathrooms are full, the notion that is there beer or commodities coming near you, and then also customer sentiment. Remember we talked about monitoring and be able to understand what the customer likes. It's too hot, the line is too long at the concession stand. All this connectivity is starting to happen with respect. You can order, boom, you order some popcorn and some nachos and some beer, and it already knows your seat. You're already connected, and it comes to your seat, as well. So this is not common today, but we just won another opportunity to do this in the UK, and it'll be the norm. And people will not go to a stadium if you can't. Will you go to a stadium if there's not a bathroom? Will you go to a stadium? I'm looking around if there's not beer. No. Okay, next. Some of them are delayed, I understand. By the way, I'm looking around. Do you know there's a healthcare facility here, fitness center? I just want to point that out. It's open 24 hours. Let's move on. The connected car. The connected car. This is kind of cool, right? We have the software to connect the car for many, many things. It's not necessarily autonomous, but again, I think you know the value here, some real world. How do we do these things? I want to point out real quickly, we have the HPE IoT Innovation Labs, and Dan was our guest here when we had one of our grand openings in Houston. We have one working in Singapore. 2018, we'll do one in Geneva to serve Europe, and you can see the things we build here. Now I want to point out we ideate there, come up with the solutions, we develop them and validate them, and then we use it as a hub for support with SIs, with end users, and with partners, right, as well. And as you can see, you can look around, it's also free of charge, and we have on-site access, of course, and then we also have, in the top you can see people in meeting rooms that we have attached to this lab, and then of course we can have remote, VPN, secure VPN into it as well. So I offer that to our customers and partners, and also we have something no one has, no one, to my knowledge, you can correct me if I'm wrong, has an IoT Innovation Lab and piano bar. And we have one, and you can see the piano there as well. And once in a while I will play and sing. There's no alcohol there, although I do sound better, I notice, if the audience is partaking in alcohol. But why did we have this thing? And my president of our company, Antonio Neri, president of HP, came and did the ribbon cutting for this grand opening. And I was thinking, how do I explain I have a piano here to the boss, right? But the piano is a thing, and it's connected to our internet or our network, and by voice command you can tell it to play the song. So as we have guests come in, we say, tell your favorite song. I would like to hear the Benny Hill Chase song, for example. We get a lot of requests for that. Okay, let's move on. Those of you who don't know it, I'm going to do a few predictions here in the future. We talked about big analog data, some new terms, perpetual connectivity, the annihilation of time and place, and these lead to what? unprecedented statistical significance, meaning lots of data for unprecedented access, unprecedented efficiency and productivity is going to happen. So I'm going to say a few things real quick. In the future, it will be easier for you to predict the future. Not the present, but its future. Why? You're going to have more data and it will be easily accessible, right? Which is true today. It's easier to predict the future today, except for weather. That hasn't seemed to have progressed, if you've noticed. But right, it's going to be easier, and it will be easier. I can't even, get somebody to tell me it's going to rain on Friday, today. But anyway, the point is we can predict better, business-wise, health-wise. Next, in the future, it may be illegal for you to drive. Why? You won't want me to drive. Why? Because I will be 100 times more likely to hurt your family or you. So you will in society, this is a prediction, by the way, you and your society will not want humans driving anymore, right? We just don't want it anymore. This is not a big deal because there's subways or people who don't own cars. So let's move on. In the future, your vital signs and health status will be constantly automatically monitored in your clothes and jewelry. Constantly, when you put on a shirt, there'll be sensors that will look at perspiration and the muscle movement, right? Be able to sense internally what's happening constantly. Some of you might not like that as well, because I will be constantly told to lose weight. But the point is, you pull it. You could be brushing your teeth and it can look for mouth cancer cells or skin cancer cells. These can all be, and we talked about the toiletries, and the tattoos will also be sensors. We talked about how they can also be connected to the internet and graphics. In the future, your smartphone function will be in your contact lens, perhaps, right? Or maybe embedded in some way. And then I already mentioned this, your tattoos. Some of you don't have tattoos, but you will when this happens, right? As well. Okay, I'm wrapping up here. With innovation, it's important to challenge common belief. I just want to pass on some advice. In all the years, I've worked mostly in first mover new product categories, mostly in my career. It's really important to challenge the common belief. The number of times I've seen where that works. For example, there's no direct evidence in the written account of his great fall that Humpty Dumpty was an anthropomorphic chicken egg. Did you know that? But you think he is and was. Everyone thinks Humpty Dumpty was an egg. Go back to the original. I know you don't have much to do, so go back and look at the original stories. There's nothing in there. Anyway, it's kind of funny how that happened, right? Maybe he was, but we don't know. A good team aggressively follows trends. A great team sets the trends. We want to help you in Nth Computing and in HPE to help you set trends. We want to set trends so you can set them with your customers. Now I have to move on to, real quickly, leadership and social responsibility. I happen to be the founder of SOC, and Nth was kind enough to have me speak in that capacity, so if you allow me very quickly, and that's why we have this here and why we're collecting socks. So we have a corporate sponsor of SOC, which is a charitable organization at socrelief.com. We have a Facebook presence at SOC Relief and Instagram, and we have a simple mission, and I would like to say this was shown already, and the simple mission is socks are really simple. I mean, they're really easy. We give them to the homeless, distribute to the homeless, and it's amazing the feedback we get. I want you to know that invariably, and we have some other partners of SOC and also our customers here, the Salvation Army, and I think you would agree with me, it's among the most overlooked item. And I think, Kyle, you have told me that. In fact, I met a guy and I gave him some shoes and he asked me for socks. And I ran home, I said, see, to my wife, see, because people thought this was funny, that we would do a sock thing, right? But it's very, very great to obviously cover the feet in the heat, or if there's sores and pains in the nerves we've seen, but also in the cold weather. They can be used as mittens. They can be tied together and used as scarves in the cold weather as well. But we do a second thing. We wanted to help the children, and they're not on the streets in the United States. They are in other parts of the world. I've seen them. I've done charitable work with orphanages in India. They are on the streets, but in America they're not. They don't last on the street, right? They're taken in, and they're in homeless shelters or foster homes. So we do sock puppet craft events. We are doing one here in Los Angeles on November the 16th. So if you're interested in that, you could participate. It's a great time. We did one in Houston. We'll be doing one in New York. And next week we're doing one in Raleigh, North Carolina. It's a wonderful time. Again, all we do is use socks. No collection of money. No food, nothing else, just socks. And this is how it works. This is my last slide, is someone like you fills up the box or sends them in directly. We're getting socks from all over the world because you can do an Amazon wish list thing on the website. And again, I'm not suggesting you have to participate in this. I just wanted to thank publicly, and now I'm speaking as the founder of SOC, I want to thank publicly Nth Computing for their social responsibility. and aligning. And I think they would tell you it's very easy to align with SOC, but it has huge impact, right? The amount of investment is low and the impact is very, very high. Donna told me that love is in the sock drawer. And every American, I think, has socks they don't use, right? That's how it happens. I ordered 3 pairs of socks from Amazon. They sent me 48 pairs of the same socks. That's how this was founded. And I looked at that, and they said, well, Dr. Bradicich, why don't you just simply give them to your favorite charity or keep them? Now, I'm thinking, I already have 50 pairs. Why do I need another 48? The wash cycle isn't going to use them all. You follow what I'm saying? By the way, if you have 48 pairs of the same socks, it really is easy during laundry time. I just want to point that out to Matt. You lose one, so what? But anyway, that's how this started. And we started with that. And of course, I said, and I've been working with the homeless. I wonder how they'd feel about socks. So it was very much market driven, meaning the homeless, they wanted them. And that's how this started. Okay, I've already taken up enough time. So should I turn it back over to our MC, our wonderful MC?